Today we head to the home of racing Silverstone with its long straights, wide nature, and maggots and beckets to contend with. The stage is set for an amazing final monthly final. James Baldwin, who pound for pound may be the very best sim racer out there, alongside, for me, Joshua Rogers. He's qualified for this month, but it's his first time of qualifying. More vitally, George Boothby and Tariq Adam must have seen this because they have come back, obviously previously qualified, and it makes sense for them to indeed race today. So let's just explain what that means. Basically, top 3 will automatically qualify today for the semi-finals. But if one of the already qualified drivers finishes in that top 3, they block someone who indeed maybe finishes in 4th. They block them from qualifying. So only drivers who have been accumulating points over the last 5 months will qualify. Yeah, it looks like we've only got 12 in the race today. So this is a big opportunity to get into that top 3 today. We're saying it would be vital for the drivers who have already qualified to maybe try and block someone out like James Baldwin. Yep. But ultimately, they are not. So this is absolutely wide open for me. I think your favourites now become James Baldwin, of course. He's gone for the #1 car. What an obnoxious man. He's a beautiful human. I love him. We've got Marco Yonkers, who's kind of new onto the scene in terms of pace over the last sort of 12 months. He really has improved. I would say McDade, of course, is going to be up there. Niels van der Koekout is again another driver I was looking at before. But outside of those top 4, I'm not sure. Maybe Blotto could be up there and in amongst it. But I think that will be what we're looking at as our top 4.
This is going to be rather open indeed. Remember, we've also got a number of drivers who, they're not racing in rounds 1 through 4. They have every incentive to take a risk, absolutely try and punch their ticket, and maybe do a one-off YOLO lap to get onto the 1st or 2nd row of the grid. And you never know what might happen here. That's what I love about the G Challenge. At the end of the day, we have thousands, tens of thousands of people throughout the course of nearly half a year trying to qualify to make their way to the semi-finals, and this is literally the last opportunity for the drivers to do so. About 7 minutes separates us from knowing how these drivers are going to line up, and 1/4 of this grid are going to go through to the semi-finals. This is a big opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Also, there's been an update to ACC. So 1.8 was out 10 days ago, and they were only given 3 days notice that there was going to be an update. So they've had 10 days to indeed plan for this, indeed find setups, because all of the setups that they had previously would not work anymore. So they have to go out there and find a new setup. The differences really are the tyres. So in terms of the tyres, it's so much easier to lock up on entry into a corner. It's so much easier to light the rears up coming out of a corner as well. But also, apparently you can lean on the tyres and slide the car a little bit more. So you can be a little bit more aggressive mid-corner. But if you make a mistake, if you indeed spin the car, you will really be hurting for a good couple of laps. So it's hard to get those tyres back into a decent range, as we like to say. So yeah, as much as I said that there's a clear, strong 4 drivers here, it's going to be about who's adapted over the last 10 days, who maybe found something in terms of the game physics that someone else maybe didn't.
It's going to be a weird one, right? Whenever you're racing in any game, let alone a sim, when you have something like an update or a patch come through, you don't always 100% know exactly how it's going to affect your game. And part of being at the tip-top end is that it will affect some drivers more than others. And how quickly you're able to adapt. That is so critical in all esports, not just sim racing. But here, especially when the difference of half a tenth could be the difference of the front row or row 4, I mean, it is absolutely critical. So I suspect a lot of these drivers will have used the last 10 days to really hone in on what's changed and try and set as consistent, not necessarily fastest, but as consistent a race pace as possible for them to maximize their chances of getting a podium here.
Yeah, for sure. The times are a little bit slower than what we would expect. I'm just going to go off of the data from my racing community. The lap record is a 56.073. This was pre-patch from last week. You can see that James Baldwin, who you would expect to be there or there around that sort of time, is a 56.9, maybe a high 55 you would have expected before the patch last time out. So yeah, I'm expecting to see him maybe find half a second. But yeah, it's just a touch slower than it was previously.
They still have time to improve, though. Just under 5 minutes to go now. And we have James Baldwin as the only driver in the 156s. But as you mentioned, Luke, We've got plenty of room to go before we start hitting lap record territory. That said, I'm guessing they're driving on a little bit of a cooler track at night, or at the very least around sunset and dusk. Is this likely to have any sort of effect on their lap times?
Yeah, it'll make it quicker, for sure. So the lap record that I was just going on was done at sort of midday time, so not a terrible time of day to be doing your lap times, but the track's baked, so your tires are effectively like bubble gum. They're just like not that grippy, and they don't last very long. But yeah, so with it being a cooler temperature, it's just a bit more consistent around the circuit. So yeah, you will see that the times will be a little bit faster. But the fact again, it's around about a second off of what I would be expecting. I'm expecting to see the times be a little bit faster than they are. I'm sure that Baldwin isn't going to let us down. I'm sure we're going to see a mid 56.
I'm looking forward to that. The question for me is how many different drivers will give Baldwin a run for his money? I don't want to see a one-horse race gallop off into the distance. I mean, I'd love to see a great performance just as much as the next guy. Don't get me wrong. But what I want to see are 3 great performances within half a second of each other on track. That is very much up my street.
Yeah, so 1.7, the update that came out a year ago now, last November, there was a huge implementation towards the tyre, getting heat into the tyres, and the full lap formation lap being absolutely vital. You could gain yourself a second to 2 seconds on the first couple of laps of a race. We only use a short formation lap. So yeah, they cannot get the heat into the tyres. So the first lap is going to be tiptoeing around. Yeah. Even someone like Baldwin, who's an absolute magician, he'll be tiptoeing around. And if there's people watching at home going, why is James Baldwin suddenly like the be all end all? He's pretty much won every competition there is. And also he literally drove this car that he's in right now in real life for Jenson Button Team Rocket in the British GT Championship. So he legitimately, like, yeah, you could, if you just like poke your head into this car, you can smell James Baldwin.
I think that means that he's got too long a stint in the 24-hour races, mate. But maybe that's a different story for another time. Chris McDade, we were following him earlier on. He's currently up into provisional P3, and he's only 600ths of a second down behind Statsenko at the moment, with 2 minutes left to go in the qualifiers. So all within a couple of tenths of each other, and in fact, second through fifth within 2 tenths of each other at the moment. So that's pretty strong. A little bit of a gap, though, to the cars behind. After the 157.392 set by Victor Taraș at the moment, we then have a whole bunch of drivers in the 0.6, 0.7, 0.8s. In fact, a solid group of 5 of them here. So really, we want to see them closing that gap to make the midfield more interesting. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a front group of 5 or 6 cars, and then a second group that falls further behind.
Yeah, well, we're about to see McDade come up towards the end of this lap. He's going to have one more flying attempt, so it might be a good idea to have a little on board with him once he crosses the line, so we can have a look at exactly what circuit we are going to be contending with, and I can talk through maybe some of the better opportunities for drivers to indeed make some overtakes. We're heading then through the final couple of corners. So you can see he's weaving left and right, trying to get some warmth into the tyres. Look how wide of an entry he's trying to take in towards a final complex of corners. That's to try and maximise his speed. Here we go then, over the curb, final attempt for Chris McDade. And can he find those extra 3 tenths of a second to potentially go up into the front row of the grid? 56.7 now for James Baldwin. Here we go then, through turn number 1 for Chris McDade, through Cops Corner. And again, just using all of the curb on the outside the best you possibly can. And now you're going to set yourself up for Maggots and Beckett's here. You can lose so much time through here. It's not an overtaking complex of corners, but if you make a mistake through this part and someone behind you gets an absolute nailed version, it goes onto a big, long straight, which indeed heads up towards Stowe Corner. Look how wide it is. And again, we should get a panned view here of him coming up towards the right-hand corner. This is the best opportunity to make an overtake around the circuit. Look how wide it is on entry. But also you can use a lot of runoff on the exits. If you send one up the inside, you're going to slow another car down by making that move, but ultimately that is the best opportunity to do so. So Maggots and Beckett's are a key part of the circuit. Get that exit onto to the Stowe straight, and then we can indeed potentially make a move. Sorry, onto the Hanger straight, not Stowe straight, Stowe Corner. Here we go then across the old start-finish line. This is actually the Formula 1 start-finish line as we come then through the right-hander, and again you transition to a left-hander very, very quickly indeed. So it's all about making sure that your car is indeed the weight has been transitioned perfectly, otherwise the rear can just step out. Again, try and avoid the sausage curb on the inside. And as we come then through the left-hander onto the Wellington straight, we will come Chris McDade looking very quickly indeed.
Let's see if he can improve. He's currently on a 1:57.265. We don't see that time get any faster. We have got a second driver in the 156 is Mikhail Statsenko, who was already in P2. Improves to within a tenth of James Baldwin. Hello, game on. 1:56.820. That's exciting.
That's an incredible time here. McDade, though, is his final attempt here. Has he found a little bit of magic as well? Again, he's going to have to improve hugely. Blotto now P3. Across the line we will go then for McDade. Does he find that extra time? Doesn't look like he has done. No, he does not. James Baldwin has done a 56.7. We're expecting him to be up there, but the big surprise is that Statsenko is on the front row, and it is not by a lot at all. It's less than a tenth of a second. Very interesting indeed.
P3, provisionally Matteo Blotto came in with a 1:57.125. At the tail end of that, absolutely delightful stuff. And Chris McDade provisionally P4 with a 1:57.265. Victor Taraș, who we saw go over the line just at the end there, was on a 1:57.357. And that's where the gap starts to come out. Dragoș Simion is 1:57.577, I think, so just over 2/10 slower. And then Van der Koekelt is the first of the cars that are in the 0.7s. He actually leads a string of 5 cars that are between 1:57.7 and 1:58 flat. So it does look like provisionally there's likely to be a front group and a rear group of cars, but anything can happen come the race.
Yeah, you say that, but in a race, you can kind of make up for that because of slipstreaming of the car in front. So you can gain a couple of tenths across a lap time, maybe over the course of a whole lap here at Silverstone, half a second. So expect the group to stay together. Expect there to be some overtaken opportunities. And for drivers that we've not seen before, expect there to be some chances taken.
So here are your track conditions for Silverstone. A little bit different this time around. It's a cool 20-degree track temperature as well as 20-degree ambient temperature as well. Ha! You won't get England looking that dark and 20-degree ambient temperature on my life. I call that one out. Absolutely no wind and nice and cloudy conditions. So we're all set for a rather exciting nighttime race around Silverstone.
Absolutely. It's exciting times. This is a home race for Baldwin. It's a home race for McDade. And there's one driver that doesn't care about any of that sentiment, and that is indeed Statsenko. And, well, he'll want to have one stat next to his name, and that is being in the top 3, qualified through to, indeed, the next week's semi-finals, and the job is a good one.
Waiting now for all of the drivers to get lined up on the grid. They've got a little bit of time to maybe take a quick comfort break, but really just get themselves ready and in the mindset for this race. Lights coming on the cars now. I don't advise going around Silverstone blindfold. Here is what your grid is going to look like. James Baldwin is on pole position alongside Mikhail Statsenko. We've then got Blotto and McDade on row 2. Taraș and Simion will be row 3. Van der Koekelt, Leo Rice, Andrei, Miclea, and Sebastian Apostol will make up your top 10.
The final 2 drivers then are Cristian Berindea and indeed Marco Yonkers, didn't get a lap time in. Statsenko here has got to be clever and try and force a mistake here from Baldwin off the start line. Try and potentially be right at the edge of his imaginary box. And here we go then. We are off. We are green light racing and Baldwin and straight across the bonnet of Statsenko as we come through turn number 1 and, well, straight up towards Maggots and Beckett's here. No time for these drivers to breathe here. Simon then going defensively in P5, trying to hold on to P5. Baldwin there with a very nice entry. Runs a little bit wide though. Maybe an opportunity here for Statsenko, but no, he's nailed it, hasn't he? Again, it's vital that you're on the power nice and early up towards Stowe Corner. Statsenko is very close indeed. Is there the opportunity for an overtake here? He is closing up. Is there going to be a dive here? Doesn't have to, just needs that top 3, of course. But ultimately, yeah, he decides not to. Baldwin there maybe going in ever so slightly defensive. Didn't attack that corner as best he possibly can, but he is indeed, for the first half of that, survived. And that's all that he needs to do. Blotto, who's just ahead of McDade, expect that to go down to the wire. Taraș and Simion, I think, have just gone through side by. Yeah, they are. So the next group of cars, Taraș and Simion, are very close indeed. The front 4 have kind of got away here. And I think you'll find that Taraș has just held on. And, well, off the circuit we go then for Simion. We've got Race and Van der Koekelt. So you're right, John. It has become 2 groups of cars. I thought that they wouldn't battle as crazily as they have on lap number 1, but ultimately here we are, and I am all for it.
Oh, Apostol having a little bit of a lawn mowing exercise there by the looks of things.
Dive at the inside. Simion on Race. Oh, it's brilliant. Oh, he's caught him absolutely napping there. Oh, it's spinning there. Blotto spun. Blotto spun there. Race now and Simion having a hell of a battle there. And Simion, again, it was very aggressive move up the inside. No contact at all. And fair play to Race. He's actually read that situation perfectly. And he's just thought, you know what? Let's not have any contact here. I'm going to try and get him down the Wellington straight. It's not quite worked out like that. But Race and Simion then. And now all of a sudden, well, Taraș is up ahead of them, isn't he? Yes, Taraș is now onto the back of Chris McDade. And you've got to be clever here. You've got to try and work together, but at the very same time, you kind of, you know, need to be ahead here and try and drag him along as we come up towards Cop's corner. Oh, it looked like Race was going to make a move on Simion. Doesn't quite do it. It's only going to cost him time now. What a move from Simion.
I want to find out what happened to Blotto as well. All sorts of drama at the start of this race. It's hammer and tongs. I feel like they watched the stock car race and wanted to give us a similar level of entertainment, Luke. I am not complaining at all. Processional, this is not. Statsenko still within a second of James Baldwin, keeping him honest at the front of the field. Everybody else behind them, frankly, scrapping hammer and tongs.
Yeah, for sure. The front two aren't going to be too worried about anything going on behind them. Taraș is kind of just got a nice little gap then to the group behind, and this is for a qualifying position right now. McDade, we think, is already going to qualify anyway to the semi-finals. He's golden, but he want to do it via this way of the top three. Not worry about the points, not worry about any wild cards. He wants to finally get onto that podium spot and just, yeah, I'm not saying that if he didn't, he wouldn't feel like he belongs in a final, but the fact that he's done it multiple ways, that can only be good for your psyche, ultimately. Taraș, though, Taraș is going to definitely give it all his all, for sure.
He certainly is. McDade, I think he's currently racing in the wildcards as well for the UK, so trying to get as many opportunities to make his way to the semi-finals as possible. Elsewhere, though, I'm not 100% certain what's going on behind, but I'm trying to work out how far back Taraș and Simion are and whether they're closing. At the moment, I have to say Taraș has done an absolutely superb job in this race. Fingers crossed we see him close up a little bit. I want to see this action. 7/10 now.
Yeah, 100%. And as we head in towards, what, 16 minutes on the countdown clock there, you kind of want to sit behind a driver and soak it in and ultimately just sort of get away from the group behind you effectively. But with only being 16 minutes left on the clock, you also have to think about making an overtake when you're in P4, because Taraș, you know, it has to go through the top three. It's as simple as that. McDade, by the way, he said in the previous race he couldn't get away from a driver behind, so he couldn't attack the course as best he possibly can. Looks like Taraș is caught up, and then McDade's actually found a second win. He's been able to actually drive away here. That's a mistake there from Taraș, runs a little bit wide. McDade, though, now is going to be able to put in quality lap after quality lap, maybe try and chase down the front two. But right now he's got breathing room in front of him, breathing room behind. Chris McDade's in a perfect position. The front three are in a perfect position.
I'm looking for a potential opportunity here, but realistically, the front three are also the only three drivers who are currently in the 57s as far as race pace is concerned. This is a fantastic cockpit view, especially with the contrast of it being at night as well. I absolutely love that view of the drivers. Baldwin and Statsenko, though, half a second a lap faster than everybody else now. It feels like they were reasonably close before, maybe a second or two adrift, but now they've kicked things up into another gear. They want to say, we don't care who's in third, we just want to make sure they never catch up.
Yeah, 100%. They've got to work together here. Statsenko has not got a better driver. They could not wish for a better driver to be in front of him to drag him along at this stage. Baldwin will just do what Baldwin does. He'll just, yeah, he'll win. That's as simple as that. He is a natural born winner. It's a fact. The group behind, they're, you know, pressurizing each other. They know that they have the luxury of working together. They can do that, stay in a P1 and P2. They know that McDade and Taraș do not have that luxury. They can't work together because there's only one qualifying position, that would be being P3, so they will have to battle at some point. So that's another little bit of insurance then for the front two. But I think you'll find that there might be Van der Kukel, I think Race, and I think Simion may start to catch up to McDade and Taraș. The longer this race goes on, there will be some battling happening, so that P3 is up for grabs for sure.
And don't forget some of those drivers we just mentioned, Van de Koekelt especially. They're names that we have seen throughout the G Challenge, and the points that they accrue here are going to potentially help them get into the semi-finals as well. Is it as flashy as finishing on the podium? Of course not. But if you're not in the top 3 right now, knowing that every point helps is still useful. It's still comforting. If anything, it allows you to focus on setting the best lap time because you're not busy sweating bullets calculating if you'll be in or not.
But qualifying via that method and being P1, P2, or P3 has no difference on where you qualify in the semi-finals. It starts again.
Exactly.
Everybody's on 0, so you have a qualifying session, and that's when you can. Maybe it's the right time to hit your form right now. Right time to start moving up the grid order and not peak too early. So just getting there, it takes a form of pressure off your shoulders. And when people feel a little bit less pressure, they loosen up. They loosen up in the shoulders. They loosen up in the legs. And then you really do see the full potential. And you're going to see a few drivers as well next week where they maybe feel like they're not in the top 20 in terms of pace, but they're going to be so relaxed that they'll shock themselves and they'll produce some lap times that they would not be expecting. They'll find that little bit extra because they are so relaxed, and you sometimes see the best performances when it's kind of like, oh, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just relaxed and I'm here. I've got this far. I didn't think I was going to do this, but now everything else is a bonus. And yeah, you really will see people outperform where they would expect to be.
I completely agree. Like, I think some of the best driving I ever do is when I'm relaxed. Unfortunately, that's probably good enough to make P300 as opposed to P30 on a grid like this. But hey, you have to start somewhere. And at the end of the day, if you're constantly tense and worried about exactly what's going to come around the next corner, you might be faster in the short term, but you also become more prone to mistakes. When you're that tense and you're constantly overthinking everything, that's when the car snaps out of control. That's when you misjudge a braking point. That's when you don't realize that someone's already partially alongside you. Those kind of mistakes do happen.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, when you're in a winning position or a good position, let's say, your legs start to feel a bit heavier. You feel like you're braking a bit more than you would normally, so you feel like you're going to lock the car up. So then you brake a little bit less, then you miss your braking point because you're braking a little bit less than what you think you are. You think your legs are shaking, they're not. Your arms feel like they're fatigued, so you're turning with more aggression, so you're not just doing smooth inputs, you're more jagged. That can make mistakes as well. You just become slower. You then, when you get to sort of the final couple of laps of a race, you're then just looking in your rearview mirror thinking, oh my God, my pace, they're catching up at this rate. I can't go any faster here. I'm in trouble. And your mind plays tricks on you. Like, as much as it's all about, mainly about talent, how fast you are, the psychological part of sim racing, or the part of just esports in general, is absolutely massive. So having to deal with those demons as well, it'll be interesting to see how well it goes next week. Again, to get to top 3 in some of these months, I'm not going to discredit every race, but some of the races have been a little bit easier than others, let's say. Next week, there's no freebies. It is going to be pressure. And who deals with the pressure the best will be ultimately the driver that gets to the sharp end of the grid.
Look, some of these races have been easier than others, and it's absolutely the fault of the quick drivers who decided not to show up for any reason to those easier races. At the end of the day, you have to be in it to win it, and this format also rewards, through the point system, the drivers that keep trying and keep placing in the top 30. Don't forget, every single week, even in these easy races, all of the drivers that you're watching on screen beat out hundreds of other drivers who didn't even make it to the race stage. So that's the reason why all of these points count, is because all of the invisible work in the weeks and, dare I say, months coming into each one of these race weekends, it's massively important. And even for a driver that finishes outside the top 3 here, it's important that they walk away with something, because it is a hell of a lot of work just to get to this stage of the competition.
Yeah, 100%. No one can ever take it away from them as well. I always say, if you make it to a stream part of a competition such as this, no one can ever take that away from you, that experience. And there'll be drivers that I've said that about when we were on Project Cars last year, the year before that. And ultimately now we're seeing them sort of at the sharp end of the grid. Maybe we saw them not quite make it to the global finals in previous years, or to the semi-finals in previous years, but now we're going to start to see them into the finals. So there's going to be drivers out there next week or today that maybe don't quite make it, but they've got this experience to lean on. It's only going to improve them. It's only going to help them progress in their esports journey. So for some drivers, this is just the beginning. So absolutely, you should also, all of you should bookmark LogitechGchallenge.com for sure, because what's happening next year? Maybe you can come and get involved next year. Who knows?
That would be wonderful. I mean, we keep seeing more and more drivers take up basically the world's largest sim racing competition every single year. And the Logitech G Challenge always throws up fantastic racing. And the most important part of it is it's not some sort of elite invite-only event. It's literally open to all. New stars are born in the G Challenge, and we look forward to potentially crowning one of them indeed come the grand finals. There's still a ways to go before that, and a lot of people are certainly making their mark now to say we'd like to be in with a shot.
100%. The G Challenge doesn't care about your reputation. All it cares about is performing on the day. So yeah, we will be crowning some new champions, that's for sure. Someone who isn't new to being at the front of the race, though, is James Baldwin. But I tell you what, he cannot shake Statsenko off at all here. Half a second between the two, and actually Statsenko has the fastest lap of the race just by about a tenth of a second. That would have been slipstream aided as well. And you know, if you can stick underneath the rear wing of someone who's a little bit faster than you around circuits such as Silverstone, you can indeed keep up with their pace and just gain you a couple of tenths. As you can see there, Statsenko just lost a couple of tenths through Maggots and Beckett's, as you would expect with a jet-washed air, but he should catch back up towards Stowe. Baldwin just doing what he needs to do here, and I think even if Statsenko does decide to attack him, he's not going to be too worried about it. He'll probably let him just go. Like, you crack on, I'm going to just get P2, move on. Again, very similarly to what we've seen already in terms of the open wheel. James Baldwin goes out and wins this race. He, for me, automatically becomes one of the sort of top 5 favourites to not only win the region, but the whole competition.
Interesting fight happening on track at the moment. Niels van der Koekel has been within 0.3 of a second of Leo Rice. That's the battle between 6th and 7th place for the good part of a full lap now. So I'm wondering if van der Koekel is looking for an opportunity to judge a pass. We can see them on screen now. Look at how close he's been following. I've been checking out the times and the splits between these two cars. Van der Koekel is living in the rear wing of Leo Rice right now, and Rice must be sweating bullets. Van der Koekel keeps trying to get a word in edgeways, and my god, that was close to contact.
Yeah, Koekel there perfectly on the brakes, and Rice as well was perfectly able to squeeze Van der Koekel, because if he left the door open any wider, Koekel makes that move no problem whatsoever. We still see then down the Wellington straight, Koekel still very, very close indeed. Not quite close enough to make a dive, I wouldn't imagine. If he does, they would both end up into the gravel, that's for sure. Bit of a mistake there by Rice, but again, that's more to do with opening up the corner, so not necessarily a mistake. There's multiple different lines around such a technical circuit such as this. But I tell you what, yeah, it does. It definitely was a mistake then, because he's been closed up by Van der Koekel. As we come then around this right-hander, Van der Koekel is as close as he has been all race long. Again, just trying to sort of get into the right side mirror there of Rice, just to play with him a little bit. But as we come up towards Maggots and Beckett's here, you're going to see Van der Koekel potentially just let that gap go out a little bit more, let it increase as they come through here. There you go. So the gap's increasing, and then he'll be looking for an incredible exit up towards Stowe. So you should see him close back up here. And has he worked this out perfectly? So they're going to come through the right-hand kink or the left-hand kink.
It's not
right
bad
for us. No, it's a really good exit, but I don't think it's quite good enough. He's got 5 minutes 30 seconds here to indeed try and do that again, but it was a perfect, really. Ultimately just didn't get on the power early enough onto the hangar straight. So I'll tell you what, though, he's close here. This will be a dive if he doesn't defend the inside line. Van der Koekel then round the outside. You can see that Rice is going to squeeze Van der Koekel there on the exit, and perfectly judged there by Race. Never really forcing Van der Koekel onto a grass or anything there. Had the advantage, and indeed Julie kept hold of it. And actually, we've done a full lap with these now. It looks like the gaps are just, I'd say it's a little bit bigger, but ultimately half a tenth or, you know, a couple of hundredths between these two is always going to be welcomed by Race as it stands. But yeah, Race still in that P6. Neither of them are near the top 3, unfortunately for them. Baldwin, Statsenko, and Chris McDade, they're looking very good. Actually, Taraș is very close to McDade again, so McDade has not been able to drive away today. Raystoke doing exactly what he needs to do. 0.4 of a second it is between the two of them. And again, this is another opportunity here, John. It's to whether he can set up this complex of corners. Van der Koekel perfectly enough to maybe make a move. He closes up nicely. This is where Race made a bit of a mistake. He's done it again here. So you can see the Van der Koekel's just opened up this right-hander a little bit better than a Race. And that means he will be on the power a little bit earlier. He's a lot closer this time round. But Race then, with that mistake, is able to indeed be on the power a little bit earlier through the final part of that complex of corners. So well, here we go. There's a big mistake there. Taraș and McDade have had it coming together, I think. Yeah, they have. So McDade then is on the inside here. They're going to go through Magnus and Beckett side by side. So as you can see here, Taraș has got contact level with McDade again. So we need to see this in its entirety. And all of a sudden then, Simion's now closed up, and this may be the opportunity for someone like Race or Van der Kukel. They could potentially close up here. They're not far behind. They're side by side then as Taraș tries to indeed hold on to the position that McDade had as they come up towards Stowe. McDade's going to sweep it around the outside. He's going to hope now that Taraș runs wide and then go underneath him. He's not quite close enough there, but yeah, there was definitely contact twice there for sure. McDade then fakes to go up the inside and now opens up the outside. Taraș is going to be late on the brakes there. Almost contact between the two of them. Door being left wide open. Then Simion is going to be on the inside then of McDade. McDade's got to pinch him onto the apex then. Oh, brilliant from both of them. And Simion, I think, is going to gain that position here. Taraș is being given a bit of a freebie then because of these two as we come through that sweeping right-hander. Brilliant stuff there. That is turn one for the F1 circuit, but this is the middle of the circuit for our GT drivers here. And McDade is just about going to hang on to P4, but he's going to be furious he's not in P3. And again, it'd be nice to see what sparked that little excursion between the two of them. There's only half a second between Taraș and McDade. With 2 minutes 40 seconds to go, there's more than that now, and Taraș is in P3.
An absolutely delightful race so far. Two very, very strong fights going on here. We first looked at Race and Van der Kukel what feels like a lifetime ago, where I want to say Van der Kukel, if he manages to maybe let off the gas a little bit going into club to try to get the undercut onto Race for 2 laps in a row, he stayed alongside, and that's where he lost the 2 or 3 tenths out going on to the start-finish straight. So I wonder if Van der Kukel's going to do something different there. But then absolutely fantastic as well between McDade and Taraș, and that's for the all-important P3 position as well. Really, really delightful stuff from all of these drivers. And considering that the front two are frankly running away with it right now, it's good to see so much action up and down the field.
Yeah, but it has to be. Taraș has to take a chance. McDade has to take a chance. You know, this is the final opportunity. There's 1 minute 44 seconds left of this race, and whoever finishes in that top 3, they're through. You know, it's as simple as that. I told you there's going to be some chances taken. I told you there's going to be some moves and shakes, and well, this final lap that we're about to embark upon is going to be fireworks all over the place, although McDade makes a huge error there, and we've seen him run off the circuit on the previous lap, and it takes a couple of laps for the tyres to get back into a good range, and ultimately we're seeing him struggle there with grip as he runs side by side with Simion as well, and I think Simion might have got him.
We've got a Quantum Pay replay here as well of that earlier move, Chris McDade and Taraș. Let's take a look at what went on here.
Yeah, Taraș is just sent it on the inside. He had no right to make that move, I'm afraid. If he managed to indeed keep hold of a car onto the circuit and leave a car's whip from the outside, and maybe even if he ran onto the curb, Taraș, you could maybe say, oh, okay, they're right on the limit, they're just battling for position. He's just punted McDade off the circuit, and he ran off the circuit as well. So
I like what McDade did afterwards, though. He went off the circuit, and he clearly could have rejoined the circuit with a speed advantage to Taraș, and he went, even though that might have happened earlier, McDade actually slowed the car down a little bit and made sure that Taraș kept the track position when he rejoined the track. So that was nice of him, at least.
Yeah, and I tell you what, that's ultimately one of McDade's biggest faults. If there is such a thing with him, he is far too nice on the race circuit. He could be a little bit more aggressive. He chooses not to, and that's why he's one of the most liked around, to be honest. He's very, very quick, but ultimately, yeah, he can be a little bit too nice. I'm not saying he should have just jumped on there and took the driver out. That was the perfect execution there. That's what you expect from every driver, really.
Sure, of course.
But in other situations where he could squeeze someone, or he could, send someone onto a curb, for instance, he just chooses not to. So I think, yeah, he was always going to yield from that spot.
And well, Baldwin and Statsenko out in front. I have a feeling they are not super strongly racing each other right now. They know that they are through. An absolutely delightful drive from James Baldwin. Mikhail Statsenko, though, in P2. Absolutely wonderful drive from lights the flag from him. These two are going to be very happy with themselves today.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether over the last half a lap, Statsenko might just have a go here, just to kind of let Baldwin know that, oh, hold on, maybe there's a new kid on the block here.
Oh,
I'm not sure he's quite close enough, but yeah, I'm not sure if I think Baldwin may have just kept him at arm's length more than anything, to be completely honest with you. But Yeah, this is perfect for both of them. They're both through. They don't care. They'd have no idea the carnage just gone on behind them. Ultimately, Taraș in P3 as it stands. Again, it'll be a provisional result. I think that will be looked at for sure. But these two, again, don't have to worry about it. A few corners to go here. James Baldwin, who just wins and wins and wins and wins and
That's
wins.
what he does.
And then on Sundays, he does it twice. But here on Friday, James Baldwin, first attempt at qualifying for the semi-finals in the Logitech McLaren G Challenge. And James Baldwin will indeed progress to the semi-finals.
Fantastic. So have a little bit of a wiggle there. He knows what he has done. Absolutely delightful race from James Baldwin. Mikhail Statsenko, though, just behind him. Yes, Baldwin was driving within himself and was comfortably holding him off, but Statsenko also didn't put a wheel wrong and managed to keep up to Baldwin the entire race as well. Victor Taraș will go ahead and grab third place. So that is provisional, of course, subject to adjudication and stewards confirming the result. He certainly had the pace there at the end. I don't know if McDade picked up some damage, but Taraș finished the race something like 4.5 seconds up on him.
Yeah, maybe he did. I think that's the first contentious top three we've had in terms of that. It was very clear that Taraș has just driven McDade off the circuit to make the overtake. I'm not sure it was intentional. It could have been very much just mistimed his braking, tried to be, I don't know, got onto the grass a little bit, maybe onto the marbles, but ultimately it wasn't a clean move. We all saw it with our eyes. And I'm sure that there'll be something done about that. But ultimately, McDade finished 4.5 seconds back, like he said. So something else has gone awry there as well. Simion was involved. So yeah, all three drivers. I don't know what's gone down. We missed it ultimately, but the top two, that's what we really need to be talking about right now. Statsenko and James Baldwin, more to the point as the race winner. Those two looked very quick indeed. And Statsenko, that's the first time I've heard of him. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, potential favorite going into the semi-finals for sure.
Yeah, he definitely has to be a contender. I mean, it feels like he was in control of that race from beginning to end. He didn't feel the need to drive away and try and pull out a big gap. We don't know how big a gap he could have pulled. At the end of the day, he started on pole ahead of Statsenko, sure, but it was a 10th in it. So maybe
maybe he couldn't have got the gap at all, John.
Maybe.
Like, I don't want to discredit Statsenko at all.
We've got no idea.
He's hung around there nicely, you know.
Yep.
If Baldwin wanted a really easy race and he had the pace to have a really easy race, he would have had a really easy race. So I know him far well. He doesn't have an off button. He doesn't have I'm just going to chill with this guy behind me. He'll want to try and put a gap between him. So I think we've got to give credit where credit's due. Statsenko, that was an exceptional performance.
I'm also looking forward to seeing whether or not we had Niels van der Kukel overtake Leo Race on the last lap. I know they were nose to tail for so much of that race, and we were watching that fight. It was absolutely delicious. It's a pity it wasn't for a podium position. It was really, really good action, but nonetheless valuable points for both drivers. So I'm just keen to see if those positions were reversed or if Race was able to successfully hold him off. He was defending quite well as well.
Yeah, it was like those two had raced each other many times before, and I'm not sure they have. So it's kind of like they knew exactly the limits they could go with each other. It was clean, it was cool, it was very concise. The perfect room was left around all of the circuit. And yeah, it was hopefully we get to see both of them in the semi-finals, so we get to see them race like that again.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our final result in the sports car race sponsored by Splunk. And there we go, James Baldwin and Mikhail Statsenko, P1 and P2. Victor Taraș in provisional P3, just ahead of Chris McDade and Dragoș Simion in P5. Van der Kukel did indeed take track position and finished half a second ahead of Leo Race, what I think must have been the last lap. That was a really tense battle, 28 and 26 points respectively going to those drivers. Marco Jonkers then, Sebastian, Apostol and Cristian. Berindea will complete your top 10. Matteo Blotto and Andrei Miclea then will finish out our top 12, bearing in mind that they still get valuable points. Now, I don't think Blotto, I don't think has qualified or maybe hasn't been here that many times before, but if you're getting points like that, Luke, and you've been here for all 5 months, that will get you to the semi-finals.
Yeah, 100% for sure. Like, there's no two ways about it. Consistency. There's two ways of qualifying in this. There's being consistent, and then there's doing it on as a one-off and winning races. Simple as that. So
yep.
This is the battle you're talking about. Van der Kukel and Race. Fair play to both of them. Really, really exceptional stuff from the both. And then this is the yes. I don't need to talk over that one, ladies. Everyone's a commentator when that sort of thing happens. No, I don't need to tell you what's gone on there. As you can see here, McDade trying to go through side by side, and again, it just Taraș was never leaving him any room there at all, was he? It's unfortunate how that's gone. But the fact that McDade's actually as close as he is, even so on the exit, it basically gave Simion a bit of a freebie. But I think genuinely that's the first time it's been contentious, really. The top three, Simion and McDade, that's brilliant for both of those two. That's perfect side by side action. We've seen McDade and Taraș racing for the best part of 15 minutes before that had happened, and there was no incident between them. So again, it was probably an isolated incident, just a mistake. But ultimately, it's probably cost McDade the top three here.
So that was your sports car race with James Baldwin and Mikhail Statsenko finishing 1 and 2. Victor Taraș in provisional P3 ahead of Chris McDade.